Okay, here is a sikha from the Lubavitcher Rebbe from 1958 about Lech Lecha. It states in the Sionos, it says that there are 10 tests that God put Abraham through. It says in Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the fathers. It's a Mishnah. Abraham was given 10 tests. That's what made him the first Jew. Mitzen Netzionos is Avram Avinu geproveret govern. Avram Avinu, Abraham, the first Jew, was tested with 10 very difficult trials, tests that God gave him. I ended from the Erster, one of the first ones, Un Efshar from the Grester, and the greatest is the Nision from Or Kasdim. It says in the end of last week's Torah portion of Noah that Abraham lived in Or Kasdim. And it says in the Midrash, it doesn't say it clearly in the Torah at all, that Abraham was thrown into a fiery furnace by the king of the world at that time. His name was Nimrod, because he refused to accept Nimrod as God. Nimrod said that he was God, he himself was God, and that he controlled the world, which in fact he did control the world, but he certainly was not God. And he did not control the world. He controlled the people of the world, but he didn't control the world, the stars and the bugs and the animals and the plants. He didn't create anything, Nimrod. But nevertheless, everybody was afraid of him. And they said that he was God, and they worshipped him. And Abraham refused to worship him. And because of that, he was thrown into a fiery furnace, and miraculously he got out. Now, this is not spoken about in the Torah, but it is the first usually reckoned as the first of the 10 tests that God gave him. Right, the last of them we'll see next week, was taking his son to sacrifice him. And in the middle over there was he had to circumcise himself, and he had to leap. Well, the first one was this thing of getting thrown into the fiery furnace. With the Nisan for Or Kasdim, that's called the test of Or Kasdim. From that's where Abraham lived in the beginning. Then he moved to Haran. From deswegen, nevertheless, aber, this particular test, Nittarmant, is not mentioned in Torah Beferush. It doesn't say anything in the Torah explicitly about this. Nor blois duracharem is only a very small hint. Now, the fact of the matter is the whole Torah is just hints, because the Torah doesn't really explain very much of anything. Even the 10 Commandments, we've talked about this before, are totally not clear. You have to have the rabbis to explain. And that's why the Torah was given in such a way, because God wanted the rabbis to argue and to explain. There are certain laws which were given to Moses on Mount Sinai. The explanations were given to Moses. So like, what does it mean don't kill? What does it mean don't steal? It means don't kill bacteria, don't steal first base. What does exactly it mean? So all this has to be explained, but not the stories. The stories in general, strangely enough, even though there's whole entire laws, like the laws of getting married, things are just in a couple of letters, a couple of words. But the stories are usually in great detail. And here we have an amazing story about how Abraham was thrown into a fiery furnace, and he miraculously emerged unscathed, and it's not mentioned in the Torah at all. The first test, which is written explicitly, is the one of Lech Lecha, the one that this week's Torah portion begins with. Ken Menzogan, we can say, is the time of them. The reason is, well, they're in from Lech Lecha, from your land is Faran, and their avoda from Yeder mentioned. Because this thing of getting thrown into the fiery furnace, and not everybody gets thrown into a fiery furnace, but you don't see that every day. I personally have never seen or heard of anybody getting thrown into a fiery furnace. But Lech Lecha, everyone has to do. You have to walk. You have to keep moving, whether from above to below, bringing the spiritual into the physical, or from below to above, from the physical to the spiritual. We'll see what this means. Mata Anton Gufa, and you have to work from above to below, and also from below to above, and also you have to fix up the below, the world. In kurzer meaning, in a short meaning, the Rebbe says, what I'm trying to get to is like this. Everyone has to do the following. In them inyan, from if you want to serve God, in them inyan, from their yerida, from their neshama, lamata, in a goof. Now I sort of take that back. The Rambam writes that that's one of the main things of Moshiach, is that everyone is going to be concerned with serving God. Just like now everybody's concerned with, making money or making friends or making, being popular or preserving their own lives, right? Everybody's, they say you're going to get corona if you don't do X and Y. So everybody does it because they're all afraid, right? So everybody's interested in their own health or in their own wealth, in their own pleasure, in their own aggrandizement, in their own reputation, something, want to get your name in the paper. That's what everybody's interested in now. In the future, everybody's going to only be interested in serving God because they're going to see that God is so wonderful and that God gives us all of our potential, and we haven't revealed even 1/100th of it. So everyone's going to be interested in serving God. But it says the Rebbe, that's why the Jews are the chosen people. That every Jew is supposed to be like Abraham. We're supposed to teach the whole world how that each person could do this in his own way, in his own unique way. What is the service? The soul comes into the body. The soul, we have two opposites. The soul is forced to come into the body. Kegen sein Willen lebst du. You are alive against your will. The soul doesn't want to come into the body. The body is full of difficulties and problems, and especially when a person comes into the body, so he forgets about how God is creating him and protecting him. The soul, before it comes into the body, is so grateful to God, and it's every moment is there's no fear. There's no fear, there's no worry, there's no addictions or aggression or depression. The soul. And suddenly the soul sees what's going to be in the body as it doesn't want to come in. It's like taking a person off the streets and putting him into a straitjacket. Who would want to do a thing like that? Well, then Levin, thus Levin from the neshama, because the life of the soul in a body is a tzwang zach. It's a painful thing for the neshama, for the soul. And barum, the neshama, because the soul aided nidrix arabi for the soul, because before it comes into the body, is chatsuva mitachas kisei hakavod, that it's carved out from under the throne of glory of God. Und das is, it just translates in Yiddish. Und das is erst the nidrika madrega. This is the lowest level of the soul. What comes down into the body, that's the lowest level. Here in the body, it's lower than even hell. At least a soul goes to hell, so he knows who the boss is. In this body, you think that I'm the boss. A person thinks that a person can do sins. He can make war against God. When es is faran, a hechera madrega, there's a higher level in the soul. Vize is their bechinas from Tahorahi. Sorry. And there's even a higher level of the soul than the way it is before it comes into the body, and even higher and higher. Balda, just 1 second, excuse me. I see. I'm sorry. Listen, when the soul comes into the body, so the body covers over the soul, it's only painful. But through coming into the body, the soul can even get into a higher level than what it was before it came into the body. Balda Rabgam, because coming down into the world, if as far as neshama, a groisa yerida, it's a tremendous descent. Befrat, and especially how the Rebbe brings, the Nasicha, the previous Rebbe brings in a speech that he gave as aid of the neshama, that before the soul comes into the body, veist men ir dem gan eden mit Gehenna. It shows the soul, God shows the soul right before it comes into the body. It shows it the reward for coming into the world, which is going to heaven, and shows it hell. And the soul is already in heaven. So Kadei zizolvesen, so they should know was zi hat satan of developed, so you should know what it has to do in the world. the Rebbe is their upcame, so therefore the coming of the soul into the world, Baleben, a goof, and to enliven a body, but Svangun, this is a very painful thing for the soul, like it says, Al Korchatachai. What's the whole idea of heaven and hell? The whole idea of heaven and hell, on one hand, you can say it's either pleasure for me or it's pain for me. On the other hand, why is there such a thing as heaven and hell? Why is there reward and punishment? I mean, God doesn't reward punish animals. Right? Animals do what they want. Why can't we just do what we want? Because a person can displease God. In other words, hell is just showing God's pain. When a person does something wrong, that gives pain to God because God is the creator and he doesn't want people messing up his creation. Right? It's like once in a while you get some sort of a maniac that goes into art museums and slashes. And there used to be a thing. People used to go into art museums and slash they take a knife, whatever, and slash the paintings. A painting from Van Gogh or who knows, or Michelangelo or something. I mean, if these artists were there and saw somebody slashing their painting, they would go crazy. Well, the whole world is God's creation. It's like God's handiwork. See somebody wreck it up. So therefore there's hell and heaven. Nevertheless, the soul says, I don't want any rewards. I don't want any punishments. Just leave me where I am. But I'm already in heaven. I'm going to go down to the world in order to go. The big reward is I'm going to go to heaven. I'm already in heaven. The soul doesn't want to come down. Nevertheless, when the Tzveita Zayit upper and the Sagam Nitku and you read and not looking at how low it is, it's come to the Neshama, the soul comes. You read it only because of coming into the world. So a madriga velcha is to a level which is not higher, even higher than what it was before. Either babusta mimer, like it says, you read it like it says, it's a descent for the sake of an elevation. That does it's these two things, Zayin and Marumas, are also hinted at the sentence Lech Lecha. This whole thing, this is what's hinted at, what God told Abraham, Lech Lecha. Go from your land, from your birthplace, and from your father's house to the land that I show you. This is speaking to every single soul. And every single soul has to remember why it's here. From where it came also, and where it's going, where it should be going. The soul has to go. First of all, you have to leave your land, maint. Vida neshama state, how the soul is in Ratzon Elyon. Artzacha is the language of Ratzon, will. Was does is hecher, this is higher from them, was a state in Tanya, what it says in the Tanya, as the neshama, the soul, nemtzich from Chachmei Allah, was huva chachmaso echad. The soul comes from what's called God's upper wisdom. Wisdom is sort of not the right word. It's upper life force. Wisdom, chachma is what's above understanding. It's like life is above understanding. Der Eibishter und sein Chachma, seinen Eins. Before the soul comes into the body, it's one, totally one with God. Because Ratzon is hecher from Chachma, because this is the level of Artzacha, your will. This is even higher than God's Chachma, than God's life force. It's the essence of God's will. That's before it comes into the world. And God says to the soul, Lech Lecha, leave this high level. This is what it says in the Tanya, chapter 32, Shekulam Matimos, that all the souls come from the same place. They're all twins. The Avechad Lekulano, that all the Jewish souls have one father. Kulam Matimos, all of them, what does that mean? All Zayin and Gleich, that all of them, Matimos means that they're twins, they're exactly the same. Thus is Mitzadem Bechinas from Ratzon. This is from the level of God's will. The Avechad Lekulanim, they have one father. This is the level of Chachma, a little bit below will. We have to leave that. The soul has to leave that. Next level, it has to leave from your birthplace and from the house of your father. Is Vida Neshama. This is how the soul is in the level of Chachma and the level of Bina. Beit Avichal. Beit, the house of your father. That's Bina. Leda, giving birth, is Dach from Avein. Giving birth is from a father and a mother. Vas Chachma is Av and Bina is Ein. Moledetcha, you have to leave your birthplace This is how the soul is in the level of Chachma. When Beis Avicha, this is how the soul is in the level of Bina, a little bit lower. From Av, because Av, wie gesagt, like we said before, is Chachma, but Beit Av, that's the level of Bina. Okay, so it says the soul has to leave Artzucha, that's Ratzon, the God's will, and then even a little bit, drop down to a little bit lower level, God's Chachma, that's the source of life, and then Bina, the source of understanding, leave it all. Or if another way we can also say, Moladecha, another interpretation, this includes the Chachma and Bina. Beit Avicha, this is what's called the soul, how it comes down into Malchut. In any case, the soul has to come down. Only as a Nidrik and Oifen, and even a lower way, we can say Moladecha, this, and Beis Avicha, this is talking about Bina, Zeran, Pin, and Nukva. Okay, this is Kabbalistic stuff. In any case, the soul has to come down. The dry over mentor madrigas, these three levels of the soul: will, wisdom, and understanding, or will and understanding, and malchut, the kingship of God. And because these are all levels that the soul was before. Neshama Faran, this is the soul was there. Vi zezainen in the Seder Olamos. This is how it is in the worlds. Me'artzecha, this is how the soul is even higher from the world of Atzilus. Molodecha, this is how it is in the world of Atzilut. And Varum, the source, because the source of all the souls comes from this world of Atzilut, the fourth highest dimension of reality. That's called Atzilut. That's the four worlds. So, and we're just talking about different ways of interpreting how the soul comes down, where it comes down from. Versus Atzilus is Bechlal, is Meir Chachma, and Atzilut is generally speaking shines this aspect of God's wisdom. The Yud from the name of Hashem, that's the Yud of God's name. Beis Avicha, this is the soul that comes down from Bria. This is already the Hey of God's name, or Malchut of Atzilut, of Keter, the Bria. And again, these are all Kabbalistic levels that the soul comes from. But it's what it's trying to tell us, that the soul comes down. It was a tremendously high level of truth and reality. When does Zagmen to the neshama, this is what God is saying to the soul. Lech Lecha me'artzecha me'moladecha bebeis avicha. Go from your land, from your birthplace, from the house of your father. Leave all of your holiness. Aziz al Arabganik should come down from the source of the soul. All of these different levels that we talked about, until to the land that I show you. The soul has to clothe itself in an erdish gashmius goof, in a physical, earthly body. Valdavka, in them, only through this does it the gashmius take a kerper, only in the physical body can it come to the hecher aliyah, to the highest level of elevation. Now, what could possibly be a higher elevation than being one with God's will? Nevertheless, that is accomplished by the soul coming to the body. We'll talk about this. Essentially, what it is that before the soul comes into the body, the soul gets pleasure. And when you come into the body, you can give God pleasure. When in the brachas and the blessings in the morning, we say, Neshama shenasata b'tohorahi, etc. Ata barata, ata yatzarta, ata meshama b'kirbi. The religious Jews, they say a blessing in the morning that goes like this. The soul that you put into me is pure. You created it, you formed it, you blew it into me, and you keep it inside of me. Right? Like it says by Adam, that God blew the soul into his nostrils. Tahora, this level that you were, the soul is pure. This is talking about the soul, how it is an atzilut. Shenatatabi, that you put into me, this is even a higher level. Well, from this, they can nevertheless, neither say from their door that comes down into Barativ, to the world of Bria, Yetzartiv, the world of Yetzira, Nafachtabi, in the physical body. Undavka dorach them, and only by means of this, Nafachtabi, that you blew the soul into my nostrils, is their greich, a soul can reach to the Atam Hashem Bekirbi, to this level that God preserves the soul inside of me. The reason for this enclosure of the body, of the soul in the body. The reason. Why is God doing this whole thing? It's not a natural process, right? What's his name? The Charles Darwin was wrong. I don't even know if he really intended it, as more than just a theory. But in any case, he's wrong. It is not a natural process. The world is certainly a natural process, no doubt about it, right? It certainly is natural. But who is creating this natural process, the seemingly natural process all the time? God. Just like everything seems to be natural, that you can't see God is creating the trees or that God is creating you, right? You feel God is creating you. You don't feel it. I don't feel it. It's a thing that's impossible to feel. God is creating me every single second. It's concealed. And one of the ways it's concealed is in nature and in the laws of nature. But nevertheless, the fact is that God is really keeping the soul inside of me. The nature of the soul is to leave the body. Was kommt from a shorish hecher. This that God keeps the soul in the body, this comes from a higher source than even this level of the soul was pure. When I feel it from Nisatabi, even the soul that you put into me, because this thing that God preserves the soul inside of me, keeps it is in the starker, is doch starker. This is even stronger from Nishmar. Excuse me, from the Satabi, from Shomer. I'm sorry, good. Because Shomer, the one who protects, is higher than the one that is being protected. So God protects the soul inside of me. That's higher than the soul itself that's being protected, that's being pushed into the body. Und das, this means to the land that I will show you what's ich. God says, my essence, I will show you. A line. Valdir Wesen, because a line Vildir Wesen, because this level I want you to know the essence of God. Valdavka Dalamata, only in this world, in the world, can menemen atzmas, can you get to the essence. Via state in Tanya, like it says in Tanya, Perak Dala, the fourth chapter. As leis machshava tafisa be, no thought can grasp God. Kim kasher tafisa mislabeshes b'Torah, only when it is in the Torah and in the commandments. Kein was zei zayin lo b'shamayim, which the Torah is not in heaven, only in the earth. So what's to say? When the soul comes into the world, it can do something it doesn't do in heaven, namely do the commandments, do the Torah. It can give God pleasure. Now here's a very, very major and a very important thing. And this whole idea of giving God pleasure, that's the point of when the soul is up in heaven, so it gets pleasure. A person comes down into the world and wants to continue getting pleasure. And that's not the point. The point is to give God pleasure. When a person gives God pleasure, so the accomplishment from that is eternal. It's an eternal accomplishment. Let me just take an example. Let's say, for instance, in sports, right? So somebody wants to be the champion. He wants to be the champion. I'll take an example, boxing. A person wants to be the champion, heavyweight champion of the world. He has to work tremendously hard. He has to train day and night, to train his body to do things that no normal person would do, to take punishment that nobody would do, to last 12 rounds in a boxing match. To last in a boxing match 10 seconds is difficult. It's so taxing. And they do it. Finally, the guy wins and he becomes champion of the world and he's at the top, right? So what did he get from that? What does he get, right? He gets money. Let's say he gets money. A lot of these guys, they lose the money, but let's say he gets money, right? He gets $10 million. He gets it. What does he do with it? What's the point? What's the point? If you're not connected to some value, to some thing that is higher, that's eternal, something, doing it for the sake of my family, right? They said, my family. I'm doing it for the sake of my country. I'm doing it for the sake of mankind, to be a good example, to show what people, something that's going to last. Here we're saying that every good deed that every person does makes them a champion, makes them a hero, champion of the world. You do one good thing, one good deed, you're the champion of the world, but in God's sense, eternal. You're Your picture is not in every paper, but your picture is eternal. That deed is eternal. And that's why the soul comes into the world, because only in the world can you do these eternal things. You can give God pleasure. So it's a totally different perspective on life, right? Instead of doing things so that, every moment is only in order that I could, like this, the boxer, in order I can get to be the champion of the world. And if he loses, so he lost. And here, everybody can be the champion, every moment, or even one moment. It's a higher level than these boxing champions get if they have no principles in life, nothing eternal. Is nachdem wie the neshama, after the soul comes into the body, it goes down from Artzacha, your land, Mola, from above to below, and it comes into the higher. Comes down from the highest of possible levels. We just explained it Kabbalistically, and it comes into a physical body. So, in other words, first of all, we have to remember where we came from. Okay. After that, then God gives the soul. It empowers the soul, durach zufiren, to cover, to fulfill what it says, Lech Lecha me'artzecha ela eretz asher areka, to go from below to above. Loitem tzveita perish, according to the second one, this is from below to above. What we have to do right now. First of all, you have to know where you came from. That God forced the soul into the body. The soul in itself is tremendously pure. Okay, now we're here. What are we supposed to do? The first one was hinted by Lech Lecha. God tells the soul to come from above to below. All right, so now we're below. What are we supposed to do? That's the second meaning of Lech Lecha. The Yetzer Hora, the evil inclination, the selfish inclination, right? The selfish urges. That's the Yetzer Hora. Kum Tacharayin comes into a person, the first. When a person is born, immediately he's selfish, right? He wants to live. Baby wants milk, wants warmth. He leaves the baby alone, starts to cry. As soon as the child starts to move and come out of its mother's womb, from the moment the child comes out from his mother, as darf men doch haben kochos zu starken sich Ibrahim. The Yetzer Hora, immediately, the selfishness immediately accompanies a person the moment that he comes out. A person has to have power to overcome, to recognize it, and to overcome. Is b'shas the neshama, when the soul comes down below, kitman ear, them does gets the same power, ziz al kenen aroiskin, that it can go out from artzacha, from ratzon, from the ratzonos, from nefesh abamis. Now God says, go out. Before it was saying, go out from God's will. The soul is up there in heaven, God's will, God's wisdom, come down. Now it's the opposite. Go out from your will. Artzacha means your own wills, your desires. Mimoladetcha, go out from your own natural hanagas, not your own natural habits, which were implanted in you, right? Some people are angry, some people are shy, some people are scared, some people by nature. Go out of these things, of your emotions, your will, your desires, your natural traits, umibeit avicha, and from the house of your father. From the house of your father, from azelcha inyanim, from which things, from the nit herter dartzeim, things which were given to you in the improper education and your environment which you had, right? The habits which you were acquired habits or tendencies. Go out. When out from them all is zachan, and from those things, zalal areiskin, you have to go out. Right, from anger, from aggression, from the addictions. Some people have tendency to become addicted to things, right? You get addicted to all sorts of to the cellular phone, watch hundreds and hundreds of things a person can be addicted to. There's the Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous in order to get people out of these. But that's the nature. It's the nature of a person. That's what God is saying. Okay, now you're in the body. Now start to work. Lech Lecha, go out from your own desires, go out from your own nature, go out from your own habits. You have to go to the land that I show you, where in the shul, in the synagogue, in the place of learning. Was dort and there, here's the Ritzonos, then you can start learning at least what the godly soul wants. Here the Rebbe is speaking especially to Jews. Und das wird mevatel, this will negate the natural weltige Ritzonos, this will negate your natural, it should anyway, your natural desires. At least you'll have a different perspective, a little more objective perspective on your own desires and lusts and urges and feelings. The hanachas from their natural welter seichel, the conduct from natural intellect and natural emotions and natural conduct. So what's the Rebbe saying over here? Lech Lecha is giving let's start with the Jews, because the Jews are chosen to educate the whole world about how much God loves everybody. He's creating everybody, and he expects a lot from everybody. And this is what the Jews are supposed to be the example. Everyone has urges. Everyone has natural tendencies. Everyone has automatic reactions to things, right? As those things you should know are not the way they're supposed to be. A person has to control himself. Some people are naturally positive, but that's very rare. And the people aren't. Everybody should be positive. Some people naturally, they go according to their principles. They have principles in life. They follow their conscience. But those people that don't, is they have to work on it. And here we have with the Torah, we have absolute laws of conscience. So you can't have somebody, Hitler, Stalin, or what's his name, Mao Zedong, standing up and making all sorts of new values. Your conscience should bother you if you don't turn your parents in because they have $1 money hidden under the whatever, in a shoe or something, right? To warp people's conscience. So that's why we have the Torah. So that's what it's saying. Go out from your own desires, your own thoughts, your own ideas, your own will, and connect it to what God wants. Nachdem wie the neshama, after the soul comes into the body, and it does them dazika inyan from avoda, and it does the service and serves God like it should, becomes aware of God, and does everything it can to serve the Creator that's creating us, doing eternal things. Ze is a rois from them artzacha. You go out from your land, your birthplace, and the place of your father, from namely the animal soul of the animal soul, as manman by ear a hechra avoda. Then you can even go higher. A rois came from artzacha. Go out from your desires, your emotions, and your conduct, even from your godly soul. A person could say, okay, listen, I don't get mad. I don't have any desire. I don't run after pleasures. I'm not interested in these. I sit and I learn Torah. Says, okay, now you really can start. Now you can start. A person always has to be moving. We're talking about the Jews over here, but the Jews are supposed to teach the whole world. A person has to be always moving and refining himself. That's one of the very important reasons. Let's just take a simple reason why it's so important to get married and have children. When a person has children, so he has the opportunity to, and getting married also, but especially to have children, it's a deep, different relationship that any person can possibly imagine. And there's always different challenges involved, right? Sometimes you see your children doing wrong things. Sometimes your children correct you. It's a constant work that a person has to do to refine himself, to make himself more in tune with the infinite in his day-to-day life. There's people, it's very hard to understand that how the world works, but there's people that they leave their children, they find a woman, they have children, they leave. They don't want the responsibility. Responsibility is opportunity. You can have children that you can love. They want to go into bar, find another lady, but there's just, life is but a dream. So it ends up that there's no meaning, and that you left a treasure. to educate your children. And that's your relationship with your children. You have the same relationship with God, love, a deep internal love. This is above having your picture in the papers and being, elected to be whatever the president of the United States. Every single moment. It's a whole different, how do you say, perspective. What do they call it? There's another word for it. Anyway, changing your whole perspective on life. Priorities, there's a better word for it. From Chachma, from the Nefesh of your paradigm. Your paradigm. That's it. Eventually, you can go to the paradigm that the Jews received on Mount Sinai and that Abraham sensed. That's what we're learning about. That's why God commanded Abraham, go out from even your holy levels, continue going, becoming more and more real, more and more down to earth, more and more humble, more active, more positive. Even from your godly soul, from the chachma, from the wisdom of the godly soul, from the deep thinking of holiness to the land that I show you, come to the level which is higher from understanding, to the understanding and the seeing of what's called chachma, the inside of Abba, a Kabbalistic level. And that you can come, and this is in the reach of everybody. This is not just talking, spiritual things to impress everyone. The Rebbe is telling everybody what is close to us and waiting for us, that we can live true, real lives and be attached to the principles and the reality of the fact that God loves us and He's creating us, and that God is interested in every little detail that we do. What does is hecher, this is higher from any intellect, even from the intellect of Chachma. And that's the whole idea, like we said before, of Moshiach. Moshiach will fill, it says he'll fill the world with the awareness of God, so that people will be aware. It'll activate everybody. Life will become dynamic and positive, because we'll see how much God expects from us and how much He empowers us to do what He expects from us, to become closer and closer to the truth in every aspect of our soul. And this becomes even higher than the soul was before it was brought into the world. Now let's do Yom Yom. Do it. Let's see if we can get to it. We'll do today and tomorrow. When my father was 4 or 5 years old, this is talking about the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. When the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak, he said, when my father, that was the Rebbe before him, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe was also the son of a Rebbe, the son it was the 5th Rebbe of Chabad called Shalom Dovber. So when Shalom Dovber was 4 or 5 years old, he went into his grandfather, who was called the Tzemach Tzedek, and he went in Shabbos Vayera. This is next Shabbos, and he began to cry. And he said, "Why are you crying?" He said, "Why did God show Himself to Abraham, but He doesn't show Himself to me?" This is talking about next week's Torah portion. So it says that Vayera, says that God appeared after Abraham circumcised himself. So in the first 3 days, what is the third day that Abraham was paying? So it says that God came and visited him in the form of a traveler. Angels, it says, came. Anyway, so he said, why did God appear to Abraham? God appeared to Abraham, He spoke to him, and also these angels came also in addition, right? So it says God appeared to Abraham. So why did God appear to Abraham? Why doesn't God show Himself to me? He was 4 or 5 years old, but he already saw everyone around him was dealing with God. His father was holy, his grandfather was holy. The Tzemach Tzedek answered, his grandfather said that Abraham was 99 years old, right? When he was 99 years old, he was a holy person. He was serving God his whole life. When a tzaddik, a person who serves God all the time, at 99 years old decides that he has to circumcise himself and start over anew, then he deserves that God should appear to him. In other words, if you're as humble as Abraham was and willing to start again, even if it means a lot of pain, then God will appear to you. Let's do tomorrow's. 1 second. There's a way to do this over here. Here we go. is this yesterday or tomorrow? Oh, that's it. Here we go. Tomorrow, Shabbos. The Alter Rebbe used to talk about Atzilut. But we just talked about there's 4 different worlds, 4 different dimensions of godliness, and Atzilut is the highest of them all. Atzilut he used to call Eben, above. That when, because of his intense emotion, when he would say, in other words, by him, Atzilut was so real. We're talking about this world that we are here. It's not really real. What we see is just like a veneer, a covering. Right? It's like getting excited in a movie after you've seen the movie 30 times. You don't get excited the last time, right? Maybe you appreciate the acting or something like that. The world, etc., is being created all the time, but it's external. To look at the world all the time, you can't take it seriously, that seriously. What's behind it, you can. The reality behind it. Well, the ultimate reality, that's the world of Atzilut. And he used to call Atzilut above. The Alter Rebbe, when he would write the word Atzilut, he couldn't write any more than the first 2 letters, first 3 letters. Because when he would be where he was writing, the emotion was so great. Have a good Shabbos with Moshiach now.